This man was not the Egyptian pharaoh, but Apocalypse, the world's most powerful mutant. He lived in 3600 BC and brutally enslaved people. No one knew how many years he lived, because every time his body aged, the four knights would find a new body for him to achieve eternal life. And this time it was a body that could heal itself through consciousness transfer. Not only did he gain the superpowers of the body's owner, but these abilities could be stacked infinitely. Very quickly, the rebirth ceremony began, and the silver plate on top of the pyramid was pulled down. Under the sunlight, the mysterious energy currents on top of the pyramid were activated and continued to spread. At this time, Apocalypse's consciousness began to change, and this was when he was most vulnerable. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the oppressed people secretly launched a coup. Immediately, 2 pillars were broken and thousands of tons of boulders fell. But the 4 Knights of Apocalypse were not easy to deal with. One of them simply clapped his hands and turned the soldiers into skeletons. The other controlled the flames and turned them into arms of fire, burning the remaining soldiers directly into charcoal. However, the boulders continued to destroy the structure of the pyramid, causing the entire pyramid to collapse. The room also began to shake at this time. A large boulder fell towards Apocalypse, but a knight blocked it. Suddenly, an assassin jumped out to kill him, but was attacked by a knight. But at this time, the boulders above also slid towards the end, hitting the most important bearing point of the pyramid, causing a knight to be crushed to death by the boulder on the spot. Faced with a life-threatening situation, a female knight quickly used her supernatural powers to transfer the armor to Apocalypse's new body. However, she was hit by a rock, causing her body to gradually lose consciousness. In the last moments of her life, she still used all her strength to protect Apocalypse, while she herself passed away peacefully. In the blink of an eye, thousands of years had passed, and a group of believers who considered Apocalypse to be God had found this place. The Sun of Truth illuminated the top of the pyramid in front of them, and mysterious energy, streams, lit up. Apocalypse, who had been sleeping for thousands of years, suddenly woke up and found himself trapped underground. He immediately gathered energy and created a huge explosion. Not long after, Apocalypse appeared on the streets wearing a robe. He discovered that this was no longer the Egypt under his rule. At this moment, a pretty girl with a haircut caught his attention. Suddenly, the girl's eyes turned white, summoning dust, then took the opportunity to steal the stall owner's things. This girl was Storm, but she was immediately stopped by the stall owner. When the stall owner threatened Storm, Apocalypse suddenly appeared. Unexpectedly, the stall owner also used a knife to threaten Apocalypse. It was true that no tears would be shed until the coffin was seen. Unexpectedly, as soon as Apocalypse raised his hand, the dust had already cut off his head, killing those people like sharp blades. Immediately after, Apocalypse activated his superpower again. The stall owner was swallowed by the wall behind him, leaving only a frightened face. After that, Storm brought Apocalypse back to his hideout. As soon as he entered, he was attracted by the TV in the room. Instinctively, he tried to reach out to touch the TV. Countless images flashed before his eyes and his mind. In just a few seconds, he understood the changes over thousands of years and discovered the world was ruled by ordinary humans. Apocalypse was not satisfied with this. He was determined to clean up, purify the entire Earth, return it to the era of his rule. And the first step was to re-establish his alliance of 4 knights. Not knowing how he would do it, Apocalypse only saw his hand reach out, grab Storm, and immediately release energy, turning her into his first knight. Then, they went to find Psylocke, a mutant who could turn her thoughts into weapons. Apocalypse glanced. Psylocke's lightsaber immediately became 10 times thicker. And under Psylocke's introduction, they found Angel, the 3rd mutant. But at this time, half of the Angel's wings were broken. But when Apocalypse took action, the Angel's wings not only evolved into an alloy form, but the feathers could also turn into sharp blades, which could be shot out. And the 4th Knight of Apocalypse is the famous Magneto. Suddenly, at this moment, due to carelessness, the furnace with a temperature of several thousand degrees accidentally fell. At the crucial moment, the man suddenly took action, causing the furnace to float in midair.
This man was the anonymous Magneto. After that incident, Magneto looked around and saw the strange eyes of his colleagues. He knew that he could not stay here for long, so he quickly returned home and took his wife and children to hide.
However, when they went to look for their daughter, they discovered that her room was empty. The two of them quickly went out to search for their daughter's whereabouts. Finally, when they reached a small forest, they saw their daughter being restrained by a group of police officers. It turned out that they had discovered that he was Magneto. For the safety of his daughter, he volunteered to be arrested. However, when the daughter saw her father being arrested, in a moment of excitement, She awakened her superpower and summoned countless birds to attack the police. In a moment of panic, a police officer accidentally let go, causing the sharp arrow to stab directly into the mother and daughter. Magneto rushed over, hugging the bodies of his wife and child and crying miserably. After the grief and despair came extreme anger. He took off his daughter's necklace and held it tightly in his hand. With just a small movement, the necklace flew to cut the necks of each police officer. Not a single police officer was spared. Looking at the bloody necklace flying back to his hand, perhaps his hand would be stained with blood once again. When he returned to the factory, he had closed all the doors. While the workers were staring at him in amazement, suddenly, a purple portal appeared behind him. He turned his head and saw Apocalypse and his 3 knights. But Magneto didn't care about his identity. He warned the other party not to get in his way, but unexpectedly, Apocalypse's eyes turned white. With this encounter, Magneto no longer refused Apocalypse's invitation. They went to the concentration camp through the gate. This was where Magneto awakened his superpowers. The pain of his childhood appeared before his eyes, making Magneto want to fight to the end, and Apocalypse took the opportunity to guide Magneto to discover his true potential. Soon, small metals gathered under Magneto's hands. Immediately after, countless metals turned into streams of water and sprayed out along with his roar. With such terrible power, it completely destroyed this place. Just as Magneto unleashed his potential, Mystique also came to find the professor. She learned that Magneto's wife and daughter had been killed, along with the bodies of a group of police officers left at the scene. At this time, the press everywhere reported the incident, and humans would certainly never forgive Magneto. She came here to seek help from the professor. Knowing that this was an urgent situation, he decided to take action. He put on the helmet and immediately sensed all the variants on Earth appearing. Thanks to this helmet, he quickly found Magneto. But at this time, Magneto was consumed by hatred. Because humans had taken everything from him, he now wanted to make humanity pay with blood. At this moment, Apocalypse suddenly turned to look at Magneto. He seemed to have sensed the professor's presence, so he immediately gathered energy and invaded the professor's spiritual world. However, the professor's powerful psychic ability surprised Apocalypse. He used the professor's superpowers to connect with the nuclear bomb guards around the world to control them to activate the switch at the same time. At this time, countless nuclear bombs flew into the sky, which terrified everyone. At the crucial moment, the professor broke free from control and regained consciousness. He immediately ordered the destruction of the mastermind, and the shockwave released energy. Immediately, the dense laser beams destroyed all the machines, and the professor also fell into a coma. Everyone quickly evacuated him. But as soon as he left the room, Apocalypse appeared with 4 knights and led them to capture the professor. Rogue wanted to stop it, but unexpectedly, the laser beam passed straight through the gate, accidentally hitting a machine behind the door, causing a violent explosion. At this crucial moment, time suddenly passed very slowly. A figure appeared outside the school. This young man was Quicksilver, the fastest character in the X-Men movies. He came here just to find the professor, but unexpectedly encountered an explosion. After the rescue, everyone discovered that there was a girl upstairs, so Quicksilver ran straight to the damaged floor, then carried the girl out. Then Quicksilver went to the toilet, gave the young man a cool hairstyle. Wherever he went, he gathered people. Not only that, when he entered the bedroom, he threw the boy out of the window with a quilt. When he saved the young girl, he didn't forget to drink 2 sips of Coke. He even saved the school dog from the fire. Finally, Quicksilver hugged the 2 panicking students and kicked the table out the window, then rushed out. When time returned to normal, all the students either fell into the water or flew straight into the bed sheets. Except for Blaster, Psylocke's brother, who unfortunately died because he was too close to the explosion. The others were successfully rescued. However, at this moment, a helicopter flew over. Everyone thought it was a rescue helicopter, but unexpectedly, the one who came down was Stryker. He ordered the surrounding soldiers to open fire. The shockwave that was not ordered to be used stunned everyone. Afterwards, the model and a group of people were kidnapped. The 3 Psylocks who were standing far away escaped the disaster. They immediately teleported onto the plane using their superpowers, wanting to directly rescue people, but they did not expect that there was a special magnetic field inside the plane. Not only did it prevent Nightcrawler from teleporting, but even Jean's mental abilities were disabled. The plane flew straight into the secret base, and the Demon Girl and the others were also imprisoned in a special prison. Stryker was about to interrogate their professor, when suddenly the professor's voice rang in everyone's ears. It turned out that Apocalypse had controlled the Professor, and through the Professor, Apocalypse had issued an announcement declaring war on all of humanity. But what he didn't know was that the Professor had taken this opportunity to quietly send a notice to Jean about his location. But now, she herself was in trouble, because the guards in the base had discovered an intruder. In a panic, the three of them accidentally entered a laboratory. Beast sensed that this iron box seemed to contain a ferocious beast. At this time, the base guards broke the door and rushed in. In order to avoid being hunted by the soldiers, Jean used her mental power to open the iron box in the cell. The base immediately sounded the alarm, and the killer walked out of the cell. He was Wolverine. At this time, Wolverine had been completely modified and had his memory erased. When the soldiers saw Wolverine, they immediately opened fire on him. Wolverine was furious and started fighting back. Because he had been tortured inhumanly for a long time, Wolverine was now like a truly ferocious beast. He had destroyed all the soldiers in his way. Stryker was frightened by his brutal performance and ran away for his life. Finally, Wolverine escaped from the base and disappeared into the snow. However, thanks to the chaos caused by Wolverine, the three people found Cyclops and the others. After Cyclops opened the door with a laser, everyone was reunited and decided to immediately set out to rescue the Professor. On this side, in order to obtain the Professor's superpowers, Apocalypse planned to build another pyramid. He began to activate his superpowers. In just a moment, the entire city turned into dust. The surroundings turned into tornadoes, flying towards one place. These tornadoes continuously gathered energy, and when Apocalypse stopped using his power, a majestic pyramid appeared and stood tall on the ruins. Apocalypse used the sand to recreate Magneto's helmet and gave it to him. Because Magneto was an important figure in his plan, he needed to prepare for Magneto to destroy the world and completely destroy all human creations. When Magneto closed his eyes, he immediately felt the magnetic field everywhere. The surrounding magnetic field caused a building below to instantly collapse. These magnetic fields continued to expand underground, directly affecting the bottom of the sea. Under the effect of the magnetic field, the cargo ships at sea were affected. Countless containers suddenly flew up in all directions, causing a group of people to run away in fear. Magneto's power affected all over the world, causing everything to be destroyed. And the military command discovered that the magnetic field of the entire Earth was changing. If Magneto continued like this, it was feared that human civilization would return to the Stone Age. Just when they were in trouble, the X-Men also arrived on a fighter plane. Immediately after witnessing this horrifying scene, they decided to split into two groups. Quicksilver led Mystique through the floating building, rushing towards Magneto together. But the magnetic field around Magneto was too strong, so the two of them had no way to get through the protective shield. Mystique could only act on emotion and reason. That meant Magneto's family was not only his wife and daughter, but he also had the Professor and Mystique. He had never had the chance to save his loved ones before, but now the chance had come. After Mystique and Quicksilver prepared to return to the battlefield, Magneto fell into deep thought. He remembered his past with the Professor that kept appearing in his mind. A tear fell from the corner of his eye. On the other side, the Professor was being taken inside the pyramid. Apocalypse was preparing to start the sacrificial ceremony. As long as he could obtain the Professor's ability, Apocalypse could control everyone in the world and become an invincible lord. However, as the ceremony was taking place, Nightcrawler entered the pyramid and then kept searching for the Professor's location. But suddenly, a black shadow flew down from the wall. It turned out to be Angel, Apocalypse's bodyguard, who came to stop Nightcrawler. At this time, his lone green teammate was also having trouble confronting Psylocke. Because he was afraid of the light string in Psylocke's hand, Beast could only rely on his strong physical strength to continue to dodge. However, he was still beaten to the ground by her. Just as Psylocke was about to strangle him to death, Beast managed to escape with a kick. Then, he threw her up into a tall building. While they were fighting fiercely outside, the ceremony on the Professor's side was gradually coming to an end. Not only did the Professor lose all his hair, but his pupils also began to change. Fortunately, Nightcrawler had already moved to the house, temporarily escaping the Angel's pursuit. Then, he quickly found the Professor's location and used his teleportation ability to rescue him. Then, he rushed to where his friends were fighting. As soon as they returned to the spaceship, they all planned to evacuate immediately, but Apocalypse's people would not let them go so easily. Only to see Psylocke and Angel jump onto the spaceship together and create a large hole and go down. Jean quickly asked everyone to keep an eye on Nightcrawler, then used her telekinesis to push the lever, causing the spaceship to plummet straight to the ground. At the last moment, Nightcrawler activated his potential, taking them away. Psylocke saw that the situation was not good. so she let go of the spaceship, but Angel was still stuck inside. So she landed with the spaceship. At the same time, Apocalypse inside the pyramid also woke up. He found that he did not achieve the desired ability, and also realized that the professor had been saved. Apocalypse was furious, let out a loud roar of anger, and teleported out of the pyramid, and saw the miserable corpse of the angel. But he only angrily cursed him as trash, then continued to search for the professor's location. Because of the influence of their soul connection ritual, Apocalypse knew that the professor had not left yet. The moment Apocalypse called the professor, everything was suddenly paused. It turned out that Quicksilver had activated his superpowers and punched Apocalypse away. As his pupils continued to move, the next string, dirt, and sand on the ground began to wrap around Quicksilver's legs. Even so, Quicksilver still wanted to fight back, but his arm was broken by Apocalypse. After that, he broke his calf, then grabbed Quicksilver's hair to let him go. Psylocke's subordinates dealt with him. Psylocke took out her sword, but suddenly she turned around and slashed Apocalypse in the neck. Psylocke was lifted up by Apocalypse with one hand, and finally, unable to maintain her ability in a state of oxygen deprivation, revealed her true self. It turned out to be Mystique. When Apocalypse was threatening the lives of the two of them, the professor suddenly woke up. The professor was about to commit suicide, when he suddenly remembered that the spiritual worlds of the two people were connected. Since things had come to this, the best way was to try to directly invade Apocalypse's brain. At this moment, Apocalypse's expression had changed, but in the next moment, the professor had already felt the pain of the mutants. All of this information poured into Apocalypse's mind with a huge amount of information, causing Apocalypse to roll his eyes. The model girl was released, but the professor's attack was not over yet. He threw punch after punch at Apocalypse, but Apocalypse was still Apocalypse all the way. The situation immediately reversed. Apocalypse's figure became gigantic. Not only did he suppress the professor, but he also tortured the professor like a rag doll. At this moment, he sensed the professor's location, so he waved his hand, and the entire wall of the building disappeared. When Apocalypse approached the professor, he was blocked by two iron bars. Everyone suddenly looked up and saw Magneto floating in the sky. It turned out that the one who had been acting all this time was him. Magneto had decided to betray Apocalypse. With his supernatural power, the surrounding metal immediately floated into the air, forming two long tentacles, flying to attack Apocalypse. But Apocalypse continued to advance, with a protective shield around him. The two mutants took this opportunity to quickly run over. Cyclops fired a laser beam, joining forces with Magneto to attack him. The green guy went to rescue Mystique and Quicksilver, then went to join the fight. But before he could do anything, he was sent flying by Apocalypse with just a wave of his four hands. Then, he threw Cyclops into the wall. As for Magneto, he also despised him quite a bit. And in the spiritual world, the professor was also beaten to the point of death by Apocalypse. But the professor only said to him, "You lost." As soon as he finished speaking, a door suddenly appeared. A graceful figure walked in. She was Jean. Under the encouragement of the professor, Jean had exerted all her strength. Whether in the spiritual world or the real world, Jean's strength, the Lord Apocalypse, could not resist. In the end, the spiritual world self was also blown away, and the armor was also destroyed in the real world. Magneto seized the opportunity, launching countless steel bars, seriously injuring him. On the other side, Cyclops finally escaped with the help of Beast. As soon as he escaped, he took off his glasses and fired laser beams at Apocalypse. Apocalypse could only run away at this time, but unexpectedly, countless lightning bolts appeared around him in the next second. The one who did this was none other than Storm, one of his guards. Apocalypse appeared desperate and helpless when the explosion happened. Now, even the self-healing power could not save Apocalypse. In the end, Apocalypse was also turned into dust. Everyone looked at each other in silence, not expecting the mighty Apocalypse to die like this. After this war, with the efforts of Magneto and Jean, they rebuilt the Academy. But at this time, Magneto had his own path. The two best friends still chose to part ways, and the professor also realized the need for power. So he let Mystique be the instructor to train the new generation of X-Men, preparing for new threats. And this scene also ended today's movie. Thank you all, and see you again.